Hi, welcome to another craft video from the Kansas City, Kansas Public Library. I'm Cheryl and I'm in charge of the craft kits at the main library. And today's video is to accompany a craft kit that we'll be giving out starting October 1st, 2023. But if you can't get to the main library in time to get a kit, or if you're watching this later on our YouTube channel, you can buy everything you need for this project at your local craft store. What we'll be making today is this cute little canvas tote bag that's tie-dye. Now, if you've never done tie-dye before, it's so much easier than you might think. Okay, so what you'll have in the kit, or what you'll need to purchase if you don't have the kit, is a small cotton tote bag. If you're purchasing items at home, you can buy any kind of cotton item. This has been pre-washed. You want to pre-wash it to remove the sizing, which is a coating they put on fabric. And this has been pre-washed, so if you have the kit, you're ready to go. What else you'll have is 2 different colors of powdered dye. Now, they normally come in these big bottles, but we have split them in half so that you can have 2 small bottles. And these are powdered. You will fill them up with water to the marked line that we have marked. If you have a full bottle of this, what you would fill it up is just to full, but we've split them in half. So you fill them up with water till this line. You'll shake them up until the powder dissolves, and they'll be ready to use. You'll also have a little baggie that has several different things in it. You'll either have a pair of nitrile gloves or you'll have a pair of plastic gloves. You do want to wear that because this stuff will stain skin. You will also have some sort of sheet of plastic, and I'll show you what we're going to do with that when we get to the procedures. And then you will have some rubber bands. Now, what I recommend that you provide is I recommend you cover your work surface with some sort of plastic. I have this little plastic tablecloth I'm using, but you could use a garbage bag, a plastic garbage bag, just something to cover it. And don't wear good clothes. I also would recommend some paper towels. So let's get started. Let me get some water so that I can reconstitute these, and I'll take off my watch. Okay, so I'm going to fill these up with water till that line. Put the lids, make sure the lids are on tight, because we're going to be shaking these and you do not want this stuff flying everywhere. So I'm going to just shake these vigorously until I can see that the powder is all completely dissolved. It should just take a minute or 2. Okay, so I've got those all mixed up. Now you have to be very careful. You have to use these right away. Don't mix them up until you're ready to use them, because they only stay good for a couple of days. If you just let them sit and think, oh, I'll use them again in a couple of days in another project, the dye tends to go bad after a few days, so it will only work for so long. Now we're going to take our tote bag and we are going to use the rubber bands on it. How you do this is going to, what pattern you make is going to depend on how you put the rubber bands on it. If you want little starbursts, you can gather it up here and put the rubber bands really tightly. You gather it up here, and everywhere you gather the rubber bands up, you gather it up and put a rubber band on it. That'll be a starburst. You can fold these in like a fan fold thing like this, and just do the edges here and here lightly, and then you'll have like little stripes running down. What I think I'm going to do is I think I want a kind of a circular pattern coming up from the corner. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to gather this all up, and I'm going to rubber band this corner, and I'm going to put the rubber band on very tightly. If you've never tie-dyed before, everywhere you put the rubber band on is not going to be able to absorb the water or the dye quite as much, and so that will be a paler spot or a white strip. You can also tie a cord around these to do this tightly. If you don't have rubber bands, wrap cord around it a few times and tie it really tightly. You should have 7 or 8 rubber bands in the kit. Okay, so I've got it all rubber banded as far up as I want to go. Now I'm going to spread out my plastic wrap, or my plastic that I get in here. This is just a little piece of plastic, and what we're going to do with this is we're going to actually roll it up in this when we're done doing the dye, because this project needs to sit for about 6 to 8 hours, and we don't want it drying out, and we don't want it getting the dye everywhere. So we're going to put this on here. We're going to, I'm going to get some paper towels over here. This is just my protection in case the dye tends to spread. I'm just going to set paper towels here. Now I'm going to put my gloves on. Remember, you do not want to do this without gloves. Now we're going to start putting the dye on. And I think I'm going to start, I have coral and teal here. So I think I'm going to alternate colors till I get up here. And don't forget these straps too, because the straps are cotton too. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of soak the dye in here. Now this is why we cover it with plastic. So, because this might not soak in right away. And I'm going to evenly spread out this dye between the sections that I want my colors to be here. And don't pour it on too quickly, because you'll see it's beating up right at first. Until it gets wet, then it starts soaking in. Now these dyes will not stay quite this dark. It will lighten up just a bit. And be careful when you open these. You'll see, look, see what happened? It kind of splattered. This is why you don't wear good clothes while you're doing this, and why you have paper towels ready. You can use the paper towels also to soak this up so that you don't get intermingling of your colors. But tie-dye is not perfect. Tie-dye is, it's abstract. It kind of goes here and there, and it's never ever perfect. And that's the beauty of tie-dye. And when you're tilting these, be careful, don't tilt them too fast because they will splatter. If you want to switch back and forth between the two colors, I would always suggest you keep the lids on when you're not actively holding it, because if you happen to move your hand wrong and knock it over, this could go flying and you major mess. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit of the red up here, the coral up here. What we've got in the kit you should use up most of the dye in here in your kit. The darker colors might go a little more. It's like this one, see, it's kind of spreading up there into the coral, which is perfectly fine. That's just going to make it more artistic. All right, so I'm going to set these aside if they have a recycle symbol. This one has a recycle symbol, so I'm going to throw this one away. I'm going to rinse this one out carefully and recycle it. Okay. Now, I'm going to wipe this up and make sure there's no extra dye under here that's going to get on my other colors. And I'm going to center this, I think, in the plastic. Now I'm going to roll this up. I'm going to fold the ends over. And I'm going to roll this up here, just in the plastic nicely. Okay, once you've gotten that rolled up, you're going to let it sit for 6 to 8 hours. You might even roll it up in the other plastic and set it aside somewhere that it's not going to get disturbed. Now you're going to wipe your hands off, wipe off the gloves, and maybe rinse them off really, really well before you take the gloves off gently, because you are going to be reusing these gloves. And I usually take one off like that, and then I'll take a clean paper towel and pull this off there, and I'll set them down on a paper towel so that I can reuse those. Because when you unroll this and rinse it, you're going to need to use your gloves again. Okay, so I'm going to let this sit for 6 to 8 hours and come back. Okay, I have let this sit for several hours, and now I'm going to come back. I'm going to put my gloves back on, and I'm going to unroll this out of the plastic. Now, you're going to take this, you're going to be doing this at your sink. So you are going to take this and you are going to rinse it as carefully as possible in cold water. Do not remove the rubber bands yet. You'll want to rinse it, like run this under the warm water, squeeze it, run this one under. Try and not to let the water run down it and carry the dye along it, because that way you can muddle it. So rinse it as much as you possibly can, so that you get as much until the water runs as clear as possible. Then we'll be back to cut off the rubber bands. Be right back. Okay, so I have rinsed this out very carefully with lots and lots of cold water. I rinsed and squeezed and rinsed and squeezed until the water ran clear. And then I squeezed it dry as much as I could. I'm going to dry my gloves. So now it shouldn't stain my hands. So but just to be safe, I'll go ahead and leave my gloves on. So what you will usually do, what they recommend you do, is cut the rubber bands off, because I think in case you don't rinse properly, you might be pulling the dye up onto other pieces. But so we'll just follow what the dye instructions say. So we'll just cut off the rubber bands, and if you used cord and tied it, you would do exactly the same thing. Just cut off the ties, and let's see what our pattern looks like. Now you'll notice the strap, the coral did not take very well on the top of the strap. So obviously this strap is not just cotton. So we'll have a kind of a gradient. That's still a cute handle. Well, let's pull this off, open it up, and see what we've got. All right, look at that. I got the curved designs I was looking for. You'll see at the edges where they bled together, it's kind of a purpley color because red and blue make purple. And this part is the very, very inside where I didn't get all of the dye inside to the very inside, but that's fine. Because I had a little more blue, I was able to soak it a little more, and that's fine. That gives a lot of interest. So you can see if you just do the outsides, you may end up with more white in your colors. So if you want a little bit more variation in the colors, just don't put as much dye on it. Now what we're going to do, what they recommend for this, is to wash this by itself in hot water, as hot as it'll take. And this is cotton, so it'll take hot, high heat. So just run a load of it with just this and the detergent in it, and then dry it, tumble dry it on its own, or you can iron it dry, whatever you choose. And if you're going to wash this more than once, the first few times you do it, you'll need to wash it on its own just to make sure there's no leftover dye that's going to come out in the water and get on the rest of your clothes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this home, I'm going to dry it, and I will bring it back and show you what it looks like. Okay, so here's my finished product, and you'll notice the big difference between this and what it looked like just a few minutes ago when you saw it while it was still wet. Even after we rinse out the dye with the cool water, before we wash it, it still looks way too dark. And you may be thinking, oh no, that was way too dark. This is what it's going to happen when you wash it. It will take out all that extra dye, and it will lighten up the colors and bring out the vibrancy. And you'll see the streaks where the rubber bands were is much more noticeable here. It lightened those up also. So that's my finished product. So it's, tie-dye may look fancy, but it's really fun and it's not very difficult to do at all, as long as you take a few precautions with the plastic and covering your work surface and your hands. Okay, so thanks for viewing another craft video from the Kansas City, Kansas Public Library. I'll see you next time. Bye.